Conscious Ag Consulting, where Angie will be giving you the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. And here she is now. So let's get her on board. One sec. Right, invite sent, I hope. Let me just give a quick shout out and tell people it's live. Post it. Yes.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Happy Friday.
I'm pumped it's Friday. I'm pumped it's every day, honestly,
Well,
though.
it's also your
But
birthday week.
Yeah, it's been my birthday week. Now we're officially on the other side. First official day of being 43.
35.
That's 35, right? Yeah. And I just have decided as I work further into my 40s, I am going to just become slightly more unhinged. Maybe not noticeable by the day, but that is my goal, is to just bring that level of what the heck is she going to do next to everyone's existence.
And let's be honest, it was a high bar.
Yeah. I know, right? Like, for a lot of people who know me, they're like, she can't get any crazier. But let me tell you, I can. The depths of my crazy are unending. So that's happy Friday.
Love it. So what's been going on?
You did the legals. All right.
Oh,
well,
that's
actually,
yeah, good point.
Look at you. You better get them.
Nothing discussed on this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Trains PIQ or PIQ Suite, or indeed the host, which, as you know by now, is the amazing Angie Setzer, way, and the amazing Ryan Paisley, way.
Woohoo! All right, let's rock and roll. Now we got those out of the way and we can talk freely. Really, when it comes down to it, yesterday, a lot of different things. Wheat was the leader, and a lot of folks are like, "What the heck's going on in wheat?" And I will just really say that, the wheat market kind of woke up. I think the speculators looked around and realized that everyone else had kind of abandoned their short position in agricultural commodities at the very least. Like soybeans have the worst, kind of in relative theory amongst corn, soybeans, and wheat. Soybeans would have the worst, supply and demand outlook or just overall market structure. And even in soybeans, the speculators have gotten out of their short position and kind of quietly picked up some length in that market structure. And so to see, wheat short sitting at 70-some thousand contracts short is much higher than what you would normally see. Usually they're around 30-some thousand. It's not very usual to see them get super long unless we're in some sort of situation like we saw in 21 into 22 or something like that. But to see them sit as short as what they've been sitting, with some weather issues starting to develop. So we talked a little bit about India here over the last little bit and kind of how tight they are with overall available supply. They've been limiting, what wheat millers can hold. They've been kind of on the cusp of possibly needing imports for a while. And now we're entering into what is their critical. I call them kind of one of the first major producers of wheat in the Northern Hemisphere to really enter into a weather market. February and March are very critical time periods for them. And we are seeing their weather group come out and say that they're not only anticipating the dryness to continue, but they are expecting temperatures to begin to warm. And so we're not going to say that the crop is going to zero by any means, but when you're sitting on a speculator short like we've been seeing, and you start to hear, okay, India's turning hot and dry. We've got the world consumers like Turkey and a handful of others that have maybe not had the greatest of weather over the winter as we head into spring, and then we're looking at problems potentially in Western Europe and then the Black Sea. And in the Black Sea, we saw Russia's wheat come into the winter in its worst conditions, pretty much on record. And Andre has said that based on their info, Andre from SoVecon, I will argue in the U.S. a lot of times fall conditions don't mean as much. He says that based on their data, fall conditions mean a lot, potentially in Russia when it comes to what we see as we move ahead. The biggest thing, though, fall conditions be damned, you know what I mean? Whether we take them into consideration or not, the winter has been above normal temperature-wise and has been a lot drier than what you would typically see. We have a lack of snow cover, and wheat kind of needs that little blanket to help it sleep well over the wintertime. And so a lack of snow cover with a potential cold snap in the forecast here a couple weeks out, we'll see if it shows up or not, is part of what kind of spurred that move higher in wheat yesterday. And that's supportive. A lot of folks have been arguing, myself included, that wheat and corn was out of line, with where it was trading. I think we got down to as low as 60 cents or so, that wheat was more expensive than corn. That's about half of where it would normally sit. And so now we're seeing it creep its way back up towards $1, and I had thought we would see corn stagnate and wheat rally. And that's kind of what we saw. So yesterday, a lot of focus on wheat, and most of it was just little things needling your short speculative, trader to be like, maybe I don't want to be so short, and
Yeah,
and
right.
then you have some other interests come in. You're smart. I'm gonna call your smarter funds, the people that trade the things that actually, each year that impact market and market movement. They're coming in because they anticipate your end user is going to have to start covering their old crop needs through June. Spreads are starting to come in as well, and yeah, giddy up rock and roll time for a weather market and the wheat market, I guess. So here we
Love
are.
it.
That's point
Love it.
one. There's a lot. Point two, obviously, Jameson Greer, our buddy who served directly under Lighthizer as the U.S. trade representative in the last administration, got in front of the Senate yesterday and said that he is very much, let me get the quote here because I like the quote. He says he expects to, quote, very quickly assess the results of the compliance review that the administration is currently holding when it comes to China in phase one. And then he expects to very quickly go about enforcing compliance. Now, my friend Rory at Friars at Black Silo, Friars Report said, hey, how does one exactly go about enforcing compliance? And I think that's a great question. But I also,
You will
you
comply.
will, right? You're gonna do it. Anyone with any other human in their existence is probably like, yeah, good luck with that. And
Yeah,
so
right.
so that's the question. Do we see a ramp up in possible rhetoric? And that's been the thing that I've said for a while. I feel like the administration tends to lean into escalation before resolution. And we really haven't seen this whole the deal is off. We hate each other. We're never speaking again, sort of, like you saw with Canada on Monday,
Yeah.
Mexico over the weekend, Colombia on like the Sunday prior or whatever. And so to a certain extent, I anticipate we will eventually get to where we see this revival of phase one in some way, shape, or form, and potentially move our way ahead in a different way than what traders had expected. But I also don't think it's going to be like step one is you're going to come back to phase one, and step two is China's like, cool, just don't tariff us, bro. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there. But to hear Greer get up, he was directly involved in the first round of negotiations with phase one. He's really going to kind of come in and from the sounds of it, work to push everyone towards that direction. And to be completely honest, if it comes down to it for China, and they're having to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on stimulus or potentially spend $1 more on a couple 100 million bushels of soybeans. I'm not a smart person, but I can kind of do that math. And so I think that's something that we have to be kind of thinking about is, does it
Yeah.
make sense on paper? Not necessarily, but does it make sense in the long game? If you're someone playing 4D chess or whatever cliche you want to throw out there. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
something we got to be paying attention to. That's two. Three,
Awesome.
before we're done, to stick with our 10-minute window here is obviously South American weather and what we're seeing happen there. It is interesting to kind of continue to watch the Brazil forecast and the Brazil struggle with harvest. I can't really wrap my mind around it at this point in time, what they're trying to accomplish or how they're able to do it. I mean, really, when it comes down to you're trying to move a massive crop, and soybeans have a bit of a window. Like I'm not going to say like soybeans have 2 weeks and then they're rotten in the field or whatever. But when you have a bean crop that's ready, if you continue to get heavy rain on it, it's very detrimental to quality, and eventually it starts to hurt size. We are far from that at this point in Brazil by all means. I'm not saying that. But it is something to watch. And one of the things that we're seeing is that their ability to get bushels into the export ports and get them into the pipeline for movement has been very limited. They've got like 12 million metric tons worth of nominations or beans that are supposed to be in ports here by the end of the month, and have about 1 million metric ton worth of supply available to feed that beast. We
Right.
will see improved progress here across northern and central parts of Brazil this week coming up, but there are more in the way of rain, heavy rain expected next week. And so that's starting to become a big issue when it comes to safrinha planting and all of the things that we're seeing, in Brazil as we move ahead that'll have extreme importance. So, beans, we know they're going to be around 170, maybe it's 175. You know what I mean? We don't really know what the quality looks like, and we don't really know necessarily how China may approach trade 6 months from now.
Yeah.
But the one thing we do know is that the safrinha crop needed to be planted during an optimal window and needed to have good weather in order to really kind of resupply the world corn pipeline in June or July. That is not happening. We're now 3 to 4 weeks behind. Eduardo at AgriInvest thinks that corn planting will see we'll get a window of opportunity here over the next few days before more rain moves in next week. And they're of the mindset at this point that we could see a good portion of that Mato Grosso safrinha crop planted outside of the ideal window. Now, not a guarantee we have crop loss if that happens. If April works out to where we're wetter and stay above normal temperature wise and work into May, well, like anything is possible. It's not always a guarantee that, whatever. But the more we see, if we get into next week and we see heavy rain that's followed by more heavy rain, and see a continuation of concern over what's going to happen, especially across the Safrinha Planet area, hold on to your butts, because that's something that we need
You
to
had to think twice then for a second, didn't
yeah.
you? You're like, this is
Oh,
a
yeah.
family show.
Yeah. Because it could be big. I mean, Brazil ethanol right now, Brazilian demand. The USDA is probably woefully underestimating Brazilian demand based on anyone that's in the country and looking at corn ethanol projects and feed margins and some of these other things. And so when it comes down to it, we kind of have this idea that Brazil's just producing a crop to export, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. Yes, they'll have an exportable surplus that they can offer into the world market, but their domestic demand is continuing to grow in a way that will not provide them a lot of room for error. And so this is something that it's a story that's not going away, and it's a story that should lend really significant support to corn here for the time being, because if we do see to where the Brazil crop falls below 120 million metric ton or whatever, not to mention the delays that we have, but it'll be difficult to see how we are able to piece this thing together as we work our way through the summer, especially if you were to see China come back and try to buy.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I think that's it. I think it's a Friday. I think
and everything's subject to headline risk as well. You
Oh
don't know
my
what's going to
gosh.
be tweeted next.
Right. Yeah. That's my other reminder I was going to throw out there. For those of you who are heavily invested in what the heck's going on in the commodity market, you have a window of opportunity from this afternoon about 3 p.m. until about Sunday afternoon about 3 p.m. that really paying attention to headlines is not going to do you any good. So you can just shut her off, as far as I'm concerned, like come back in, 3 to 5 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, get yourself a little bit of catch up. And then the good news is even when you do that by noon Monday, it'll probably be different. So good luck.
Yeah, right.
So I think that covers it.
Absolutely. Well, Angie, thank you so much for that. Not just today, but all week, all year so far, let's be honest. Listeners, I hope, as usual, we give you a bit of value, or Angie give you some value, and maybe put a smile on your face. If you are trading today or working out in the fields today, stay safe, keep it tight. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you bright and early on Monday.
I'm looking forward to
Have
it.
a good one.
Happy weekend.
Happy weekend.